All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Adriana Barnes. I am a fourth grade teacher and the fourth grade level chair. And my name is not my own name, so I'm going to change that really quick.
It's a great name, though,
My,
Adriana, I will say.
my name is Adriana Barnes, and I am a fourth grade teacher and grade level chair at KIPP Academy Boston. This is my seventh year in education and my seventh year at KIPP Massachusetts. And we just want to start with thanking you all for joining us for KIPP Massachusetts Black History Month celebration and panel. We are featuring leaders from around KIPP Massachusetts, and we'll be in conversation about Black History Month, KIPP Massachusetts, and our own personal experiences. I also want to thank the Brightbeam Network for co-sponsoring this event on Twitter. So tonight, please make sure you follow at KIPP MA Schools on Twitter and use the hashtag KIPP MA BHM to virtually engage in the conversation. I'd like us to start off with the panel introducing themselves. So panelists, as you introduce yourself, please share your name, your role, how many years you've been in education, and how long you've been at KIPP. And I'm going to, Frida, will you start us off, please?
Absolutely. My name is Farida Mama Graham. I am formerly the principal of KIPP Academy Lynn Middle School. I'm currently the managing director of teacher and leader development. I have been in education since 2011, so going on over a decade, and I've been with KIPP Massachusetts for 5 years. I'm going to pass it to Shamika.
Hey everyone, I am Shamika Coleman and I am the Managing Director of Equity and Engagement at KIPP MA. This is my 8th year here and my 10th year in education. And I will pass it to Bryce.
Hello, my name is Bryce Turner. This is my 7th year at KIPP Academy in KIPP, Massachusetts. I'm formerly a 8th grade history teacher at KIPP Academy Boston, and I am now the Director of Academics for Secondary Social Studies and History. And I will pass it to Coretta.
Hello, my name is Coretta Martin, and I am the Chief Academic and Strategy Officer here at KIPP Massachusetts. I have been in education, I never really left, but I've been working formally as an educator since 2009, and this is my second year here at KIPP Massachusetts.
I'll close this out, I guess, the oldest one, Nikki Barnes. I'm the executive director. I started at KIPP Massachusetts in 2013 as a 6th grade humanities teacher at KIPP Academy Boston, but this is my 30th year in education. I started teaching in 1991.
Thank you so much for introducing yourselves. And it's great to have a variety of experience, years of experience on this panel. So our first question is, what does being a Black educator mean to you? And I'd like to ask this to all the panelists. What does being a Black educator mean to you? Bryce, can you start us off?
Absolutely. That's a very big question, I think, and I could answer it differently depending on the day. But what's resonating for me right now as a Black educator is some of my own experiences in school. And throughout all of my K-12 educational experience, I had one Black teacher in every year. And so one thing that being a Black educator means to me is making sure I'm giving kids an example of education being something that people, regardless of your skin color, can achieve, something that you can set out to do and accomplish and see themselves in the people who are in front of their classrooms or leaders in their schools. So me, it's definitely a lot of responsibility. It's also a matter of paying homage to the people who came before us as educators to make sure you're really doing what is necessary to build a stronger future.
Coretta, what does being a Black educator mean to you?
Yeah, so similar to Bryce, I did not have a Black educator in my K-12 experience. So it means a lot to me to be that person for that student who may not have seen Black leaders in their K-12 experience or may not have yet. Also in my role, I get to oversee the creation of the academic curriculum, and something I was not able to see was myself in the curriculum. And it's really important to me as a Black educator to make sure that students see themselves in reading, see themselves in math, see themselves in science, and that they're not always seeing themselves enslaved. They're not always seeing themselves overcoming or struggling, and making sure that they can see themselves thriving. So as a Black educator, that's important to me, and it's something that I think about daily.
Nice. I wonder if anyone has any different experiences. So if you did have a lot of Black educators in your K-12 experience, how has that impacted what being an educator, Black educator means to you?
Coretta and I have often talked about this. My first grade teacher was Black, my second grade teacher, my fourth grade teacher, I had fifth grade teacher, sixth. I've had a lot of Black teachers. They were mainly women though, so I know, you know, I needed more Black men, but I think what that does for me, it means I get to set the tone from my position to like be Black and be proud, and that be your Black old self up in KIPP, Massachusetts. And I get to, when kids get to see me being me, which is, we're very diverse. I'm a Southern Black. And so that comes with its own flavor, that it means to me that I get to create a space where our children's identity is affirmed. I get to create it from my seat and then look around and make sure I see it everywhere I go. And I saw that as a student growing up, having several Black teachers beginning as early as first grade.
Farida or Shamika, what does being a Black educator mean to you?
I can build on that. Being a Black educator for me means being proud of being in the 7%, because 7% of educators are Black people. And a special shout out to our Black male educators who are in the 2%. And you are a small but mighty and important, significant part of the teacher task force. It means to me to stand on the shoulders of giants. So I think about my father, who is a Black educator. He was my first teacher, my favorite teacher. I will forever be his favorite student. I think about Mr. Harris, my fifth grade social studies teacher, who would see me walking down the hall and he would shout, "Mama!" And I hated it and loved it. And it is what I remember about fifth grade social studies. Mama is my maiden name. I now go by Graham. And I think about Miss Tasha Manzi, who was a teacher who wasn't even my teacher, but she made sure that I was seen and that I felt affirmed as a high school student and someone who I still reach out to today. I also think about being a Black educator as a commitment to a promise. School segregation existed in the lifetime of my parents. And so I think about just the gift and the honor that it is to be able to provide students with spaces that were not built for them, but we work every single day to create affirming and rigorous spaces where our students can see themselves as Black intellectuals, when we live in a world where so often Blackness and intellectualism is seen as a dissonant binary.
And Shamika, please close us out.
Yes, similar to what was named, like for me, being a Black educator means that it is possible. As I think about my own education, there was a lack of representation of Black educators. And so that is something that motivated me to become a teacher. And also, like, I wanted to make sure my history, Black history, was being taught in curriculum, and making sure that was being taught correctly, and making sure there were spaces where Black students had a voice and were being heard. And so representation was very key to me. And I also think about making sure that we keep the door open and making sure we're part of spaces where Black educators are able to thrive, so that more can come after us and that we're not the final stop.
Totally agree, Shamika. Bryce, did you want to add on? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting, Frida, you brought up like segregation happening like during your parents' lifetime, and also this trend of like not having many Black educators, because that's not something that was unintentional or by accident. And one thing that came hand in hand with desegregation of schools wasn't just like integrating schools, it was actually shutting down Black schools.
Yeah.
Like thousands of Black teachers and educators lost their jobs, principals, because of desegregation. And so it's important that we acknowledge that in a lot of people who were in schools in the 90s, 2000s, right? What we're doing is actually reclaiming our space in education. And so that's what another thing that really is empowering for me. It's not like, oh, we're just, doing something new. It's like, we're doing what we've always done, right? But we're really trying to reclaim that space and make it our own now here in 2022 as well. And so I just want to also acknowledge and rewrite that history.
Yeah, I totally love what you said about reclaiming that space and then making sure that our kids feel represented in, the curriculum, not only the curriculum, but like who they see every day. I think back like to my own experience, I just realized this a few years ago, like I was lucky enough to have 1st through 5th grade, all of my teachers were Black women and fully like being their best selves, holding us accountable. Like I remember my 2nd grade teacher, she bought her Ford Explorer. She made sure like we all went to the window and she showed it to us, but like keeping the balance between, like I am a full human being, but also like we also have a job to do in our classroom 2nd graders. All right, so that leads me to my next question. Who is one person from Black history that you channel or bring to life in your own work? And we know that Black history is not just something that happened 30, 40, 50 years ago. It is happening currently. But who is one person from Black history that you channel or bring to life in your own work? Nikki, can you start us off?
I have to go with Harry Araminta. Here's why, and it has changed over the years. She meant something when I was a teacher. I channeled aspects of her when I was a principal. I like to channel the aspects of Harriet Tubman, General Tubman. The role that she played in the Civil War in scouting and going into enemy lines and actually helping freed or recently freed enslaved African Americans settle in new places. And I just think her fearlessness and her knowing exactly the gifts and talents and skills that she had, and knowing that she could use those to better lives for folks right now. And I always remember, Harriet Tubman was not literate during that time, but she used her skills to make a difference. And she was bold, and she was stealthy, crafty. And I think from my seat, I have to do that a lot to make sure I create the conditions for our staff, our students, to soar. So I'm channeling Harriet Tubman on a regular basis, but General Tubman. Who else is on the list? I'm gonna go to Farida.
I felt that coming in my spirit.
Okay.
My answer to this changes every minute, but I think right now the person that comes to mind for me is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She is an incredible author, and if you haven't read her work, she is just living history. And what I so appreciate about her is she was the first text that I read as an adult written by a West African woman. And what I love so much about her voice is she offers a nuanced perspective of what it means to be a Black American, but also a African American. And she describes how the first time she felt Blackness was when she came to America, because in Nigeria, you are not necessarily associated by the color of your skin, but more so your ethnic affiliation. And I just really appreciate her fierceness, her advocacy for feminism, her advocacy for breaking down structures of oppression and marginalization. And she's just incredible. And so I really appreciate her as a window and also a mirror for many. I'm going to call in Coretta.
Okay, so hear me out. Tupac, right? Oh my gosh. I love Tupac.
Okay.
But for two parts. One, he was fun. He was goofy. He liked to have a good time. He liked to dance. And when it comes to like showing up as your full self, that's me. So love that. But what is really understated about Tupac is he talked a lot about education and the experience of youth and where we're headed. And something that he used to speak a lot about that spoke to me was about the idea of personalized learning and the school experience being connected to what students need to be successful in adulthood. And that means a lot to me when we think about the curriculum, when we think about how to support students in developing a critical consciousness and be prepared for the college or career of their choice, and thinking about how to marry those two ideas to really truly make it one. So Tupac always, his words really spoke to me because he started when he was in high school, having very, very strong sentiments and thoughts about how education should work. And he continued to preach that into his adulthood. And I think that also speaks to the importance of listening to the voices of the children, listening to the voices of our students, because we don't have to wait until we're 25, 35, 45, 55 to be experts. He was living that and he knew. And I think it's important as we're doing our work to think about our students, think about their voices, and think about how we can use that to support them in their life decisions. So, and he likes to dance, so pop.
Shamika and Bryce, whose work, whose life or work do you channel in this work?
So I have two answers. When I first thought about this question, I did not think about like an individual. I thought about the community that I grew up in and the specific neighborhood that I'm from, and how those people influenced and shaped who I am today. And they play a big part of who I am today. And their strengths and their learnings that they created influenced me, but they also got some of that passed down to them. And so like their influence is one that's generational. And so when I think about what do I channel or who do I channel, I try to channel the community that I grew up in and the people that I knew and still know from that neighborhood. But if I do think about a person and someone that I learned about as a child, I think about Ruby Bridges as one example of someone who made change as a child. And I think sometimes that doesn't get talked about a lot. Adults are not the only ones who are making a difference and who are making a change. And so it's important that we're highlighting the youth because they're also out here doing things to make things better.
The hard part about going last is now I feel like I want to change my answer for the sixth time. But if I had to go with my initial reaction, it would have been James Baldwin. James Baldwin, I used to, in my when I was a first year teacher in my little apartment in Dorchester, I had a picture of James Baldwin sitting next to it on a typewriter, writing whatever he was writing at the time. But I just really appreciate the way that James Baldwin, he would speak to you as if he was sitting across from you at a coffee shop in front of live television. He would just literally say how he felt, not trying to speak on behalf of anybody in particular, but did so with such eloquence, poise, and directness. And I also feel like he didn't hide parts of who he was in order to be seen as taken seriously in society, right? At a time where a lot of men and a lot of activists were hiding their sexual orientation for safety reasons, he was very much out at a time where it was not always safe to do so, and recognizing it still might not be today. But I just really appreciate his unapologeticness, his humility, and like him, I think I am most comfortable when my ideas are represented on a page, despite deciding to come on a panel today. I love the written word. And so that's probably someone I try to channel through my work.
Yeah. And I think, Bryce, the great thing about going last is I think you did bring find the thread between all of your responses, which is like, living authentically. And I think, like, as all teachers know, being able to show your full self in the classroom, like, one, see your full self in the classroom, whether that's the curriculum, whether that's people you see in leadership, and also like how to be your authentic self in front of kids is I feel like the eternal struggle. But I think we all brought that up in our responses as well. All right, so we know one of our themes and focuses this year for Black History Month is wellness. So what does wellness look like for you based on your personal life experiences? We know that education, working in the field of education, is one of the most difficult jobs. So what does wellness look like for you based on your own personal experiences? And I'm going to start off with you, Farida.
I think my understanding of wellness has really shifted over the course of the pandemic. And I think before, I didn't appreciate just the beauty of pausing and just slowing down. And so one of the first words that comes to mind for me is finding joy. I think joy and wellness are really connected. And I think I've felt more appreciation in finding joy in the small moments. Just, taking a moment to brew a cup of coffee in the morning. I rediscovered a old school coffee maker when Starbucks was closed for way too long. Or finding joy in just opening a new book and talking with a friend about a book that you both really enjoy, or just sitting with a friend when we have been isolated in our homes for so long. Connection is the second word that I think about. And so just finding connection and really sharing stories. I grew up in a home where stories were really at the center. And I just find it so interesting to hear people's stories, because I think through our shared stories, we see our shared humanity. And then finally, purpose. I find that I am my most well when I'm finding purpose in the work. And I feel so grateful that at KIPP Massachusetts, our purpose is so clear. So that's what I think about when I think about wellness.
Right. Nikki, what does wellness mean to you? Are there any similarities or any differences?
Yeah, so if I am not well, I inhibit or keep Farida from being well. If I am not well, how can Coretta and Shamika and Bryce and teachers and leaders and students be well? So, I'm 53, and wellness literally means that I almost feel like it's my responsibility to be rested, to be as healthy as I can be, to have my mind as clear so I can create, because if the head is sick, the body will suffer. And I feel a huge responsibility to be well. So my wellness at the age that I'm in and in this seat means I have to take care of myself and be healthy, because I have responsibility for others, and just because I deserve it. I grind, and I am embracing rest, and I'm embracing quiet. Like Farida said, I'm embracing nothing. And I think that helps me to be a better leader and allows me to be calm and quiet enough to pause and watch and observe. So I'm not running so much, so I can't stop to listen to the kids, to really see the families, to really hear the staff. So wellness is all those things. My own personal, I need to get enough sleep. I need to move my body. I need to eat as healthy as I can, which does include sugar and chocolate. But my wellness is also, I tell myself a part of my job is to be well. That also includes my mental health. So therapy, counseling, grieving when I needed to grieve fully. That's what it means to me. I have to do it because for the long haul of the work.
And I think your answer leads me to my next question. What do we hope wellness looks like or feels like for our students? How can we model that? How can we model that for the kids? And like, what do we hope that kids have and have access to?
I think like we're here to talk about KIPP Massachusetts as well, right? And I think like, let's be real, like the stereotype about charter schools and KIPP is like, don't slow down, don't stop, don't take a break, work hard, do it all the time. And if we as adults and as leaders can't do that, how can we expect our kids to be able to do that? There is an urgency that the world needs changing and needs to be changed now. And like Nikki, you said, rest is part of the job. It's not a distraction from the job, it is the work. And so I think one, like us being able to acknowledge like where we have made mistakes in the past, where we have done wrong and caused harm. And then there's countless examples I can name right now of ways that we are working to make our school spaces where kids can take a break, where kids won't be sent out of the class for being tired or being impoverished. Like that's not a crime. I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and it brought up how many coping mechanisms in the real criminal justice system are criminalized. Right. And so when people go to jail, it's because they are struggling or coping. It's not necessarily because something was criminalized. And the prison industrial complex and school to prison pipeline is real. And I think having the executive director, Nikki Barnes, modeling this, I think is a great way to empower adults to be able to do the same across the region and to do it alongside our kids. Is definitely part of that process.
Powerful, Bryce.
Yeah, and I think your response, Bryce, made me think back to like a coping mechanism when you are feeling frustrated is actually like, take a break, come back to it later, take some space. And so I think like for me as an educator, thinking about like, when am I naming like, oh, this is really hard. And also like, hey, we're gonna take a break and come back to this later. And how can we make sure like, how am I making sure and like naming explicitly for kids that like, you do deserve a break. You do deserve rest. You know, like February break is coming up. Live your best life. Take a break and we'll be back to work after.
And you know what? I think this is important. I think part of that as people of color, particularly Black people, is the overwhelming, ever-present generation after generation of having to prove ourselves, even though the system was structured for us not to do well. And I think that's what we've done. We did for years with children. We have to work you super duper hard because we have to prove to the world that you can achieve just like a white affluent student can. And what I even told our team today, my group that advises me is, I don't want to prove myself to the world. I want to create something at KIPP Massachusetts, a place where Black and brown folks thrive, and then say to the world, if you want to come on in, you can see. Join us, but we're not jumping through your fiery hoops of bootstrap pulling up. When you ain't give us the boots in the first place, we're going to create this space here and you all come and see. And I think that takes weight off of me and honors my ancestors and ensures that, you know, I want our children to thrive. That's what they're going to need out there in the world, a sense of wholeness, a sense of themselves. And we got to create that here. That's important to me to share tonight.
I think with thriving, I I think of joy. And I think that joyful classroom is so crucial to self-care for myself as an adult. My
Yes.
rest, my wellness comes from having fun. It's joy. It's having a good time and sleep, but also a good time. That's how I take care of myself. And I think for our students, that is something that I may have in common with them, where when you're not worried about overcoming, when you're not worried about reaching some sort of external standard, it's about ensuring that there's still joy in the classroom. There's still joy in this experience, and that you can take care of yourself, because everything isn't hard work. It's also fun. It's also a good time. It's also about just building community. So I think that aspect of self-care directly connects to joy.
Just to add, and not to bring us down from joy, but also making sure we have spaces where we can be vulnerable and our students can be vulnerable enough to say, like, I am not okay. And thus I do need X, Y, and Z so that I can be well. And just showing that openly so that we can get to that place of joy or whatever we need to be our whole selves again. But I think that's something that's an important piece to name as well.
And the last thing I'll add is in spaces where so often I think Black people can be celebrated for being entertainers, for being athletes, it's so important to me that students find joy in being brilliant. Yes. And not because it is for others, right? Like not for an achievement orientation, but to build their confidence and to build access. And so I think about what a gift to be able to cultivate brilliant minds that love getting lost in a book, right? That's something that nobody can take away from you. Yeah. Or what a gift to just learn for the sake of learning something new, right? Whether it's learning to do your own oil change, because then you don't have to, take your car to the shop and pay the however much money, spend however much time to do that. Or joy in learning how to garden, right? Because it's a new skill that is going to bring you joy. And I think this idea of building a learner's mentality and finding joy in the work is something that is so powerful. And when I think about the tropes and the stereotypes of Black people, it's something that is really important to me.
Exactly. And I think some similarities I've heard were joy, rest, and also safety. To say, I am not okay, I am okay. And one thing like I am learning as an adult is like, the words I was going to say was like negative emotions and positive emotions. They are just emotions. Mm-hmm. And we want to make it a safe space for all students and staff members to be able to say like, I'm doing great, got it. I'm a thumbs in the middle and I might need some space right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so my next question is, how is Blackness celebrated all year long at KIPP, Massachusetts? And think about your own experience at KIPP, Massachusetts. Bryce, can you start us off?
Absolutely. And I think this connects to something you brought up recently, or you just brought up, Farida. And also something my brother said in the chat about growing up in schools. I oftentimes felt the need to perform as a student in a lot of different ways, whether it was certain versions of Blackness that I thought were acceptable. Like I couldn't be caught studying. Like I didn't want to be caught like being perceived as a quote unquote nerd or liking Star Wars. And that's something I talk about all the time. And Adriana might roll her eyes at this. But no, for real, when I was in school, I loved Star Wars, but it's not something that is perceived as Black, right? And so something that I didn't want people to know about me. And so as an educator, it was really important for me to create space where aspects of me could be celebrated, whether or not it fits certain stereotypes of Blackness, where I could get in a conversation with a kid just about a book that I'm reading, or really celebrating that intellectual side of me. And many people that I work with now are surprised to hear that I was much more of a jock in high school, right? Because I had this image of Black male athlete that I wanted to put on when like, yes, I can play sports, but that's not really the core of who I am. And so for me, the way that I feel like Blackness is celebrated at KIPP is that I'm not the only example of Black masculinity that our kids see, right? I don't have the pressure or the burden of being that Black teacher, that Black male teacher, because when I look around the halls, I see plenty of Black male educators that are celebrating their and embodying and are free to explore their Blackness in their own ways, and have so many different kids that can, especially our young boys, can approach and talk to about just about anything that they might not be able to connect with me about, but I know they can connect with Mr. Innocent, or they can connect with Mr. Barnes, or they can connect with someone else. And those are things that I don't take for granted, especially as someone who didn't have that opportunity in schools growing up to connect in those ways. So for me, the way Blackness is celebrated at KIPP Massachusetts beyond Black History Month is by just creating the space where people can express it in so many different multitudes that don't need to fit into this narrow definition of this is how you Black, right? Like, do you boo boo, like Nikki will always say it. So, yeah.
That's my Black, boo boo.
Exactly. Not mine, but
But
you
I
know,
mean, it is.
to each their
It's
own.
my Black, right? This is what I do.
Coretta, what about you? How is Blackness celebrated all year long?
So I had the privilege of attending the Mecca of Black education, the illustrious Howard University in Washington, D.C. And Howard University, if you're not aware, is a historically Black university in D.C. And one of my favorite parts about being at Howard is that the school programming didn't have to make cultural considerations or become culturally relevant. The culture of the school, the programming of the school was centered in Blackness. So the curriculum we studied, we acknowledged, we celebrated Blackness every day. And that is something that I feel happening in KIPP, Massachusetts as well, where we want the students to have an authentic and identity affirming experience. And we want our staff to have an authentic and identity affirming experience. So we're not thinking about how should we keep in mind the fact that they're Black when we do X, Y, Z, is we create programming for all students to acknowledge their identity, to acknowledge who they are. So we celebrate Blackness every day because we celebrate our students every day. We celebrate our staff every day, and you can't celebrate those individuals without acknowledging their identity and without acknowledging who they are. So I think at KIPP Massachusetts, we do a really good job of celebrating how proud we are of Blackness in the past and how amazing we are as Black people in the present, and then also acknowledging that Blackness is the future because we are here and we will be here and we will continue to do great things. So I think KIPP Massachusetts is doing an amazing job of celebrating Blackness by not making it a standalone idea, but really just a part of who we are.
Yeah, I think definitely making our schools a place where like kids can be their most authentic selves, and kids can celebrate their own identities and share it with others. Definitely. That leads me to our next question. How is your identity affirmed at KIPP Massachusetts? Shamika, can you start us off?
Yeah, it's kind of like what Coretta was just saying, and what else was being said. I feel like I can be my whole self while I'm here. And I'm not just Black, like I can be Black and funny. I could be Black and creative. I can be Black and happy. And all of that is accepted. I can wear an Afro yesterday and pull up in my braids today, and there's no questions asked. Like I am who I am. You're laughing, but it's true. I am who I am. And so like that's one part about that's one thing I like about being here is I can fully be my full self and there's no questions asked.
Shamika, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because I remember being in a space and I got braids like after wearing my hair in a fro, and the question was, how did your hair grow so fast? And I was like, oh my goodness. And that doesn't happen at KIPP Massachusetts, or at least if people are thinking it, they don't say it out loud, right? And so I so appreciate that because that really resonates with me. Also, I just appreciate that we are in a space where I can look up, I can see Coretta, I can see Nikki as role models. I can look side by side. I got peers in spaces that support me, affirm me, check me when I need to be checked. And when I also look at just the incredible role models that we have across our teaching staff, across our families, across our students, it's just so powerful. I came to KIPP, Massachusetts because I remember hearing and then seeing, we had at one point 100 different countries represented on our campus at High Rock. And it was the first place that I have worked where I was able to engage with West African students and West African staff members. And, you know, growing up, we cooked really traditional West African food. And, you know, I had a colleague, Konzo, who we joke about vegetarian jollof rice. If you know, you know, there's no such thing as vegetarian jollof rice. But to be able to be in a space where just Blackness looks so different depending on who you are, and it is celebrated and it is uplifted, to know that you have people who literally and figuratively are standing there to help fix your crown is just a privilege that I don't take for granted.
Yeah, I think Farida, what you said also resonated with me. Like, this is, KIPP Massachusetts is my first real job. So, but I think like also like as a teacher looking around, if you see like, all right, all of the melanated people seem to be like exiting stage left, that's a problem.
Mhm.
But if you look around as an educator, and I'm thinking even like a first year educator looking around like, okay, all the melanated people seem to be staying.
Mhm.
This might be a good fit for me. I might be able to find my people in this network might become something important to me. I might be able to find my people inside of this network. And this might be a place that I could stay for a really long time. So I think one, seeing people who look like you, share a similar experience to you, and see that they are staying, and they are also like thriving, and they are also, you know, in positions of leadership, not just handling discipline.
Mhm.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
that's really important.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And then, you know, for me, it's noticing and going to whisper in some young Black teachers' ear. Have you ever considered being executive director? Think about that. You know, just seeing the brilliance when young teachers or young leaders are like, I don't know, Nikki. Oh, no, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And we need you. That's how I want to celebrate Blackness. And I try to do that here, is that I cultivate Black brilliance. And it doesn't come from me. I just see it all over the place. And I say, so we need you. We need your gifts, your skills, your disposition, everything. We need you. And that we realize we need Black people in leadership.
Right.
We need Black brilliance. We need the Black mind. We need Black intelligence. Like, that's real. We name it, we state it, we go after it. That's important to me from my seat, that we do that explicitly and intentionally.
That resonates with me, Nikki, because that acknowledgement also combats imposter syndrome that a lot of Black leaders can feel. Speaking of, you know, Nikki, me and you, we go to a lot of events where we're the only Black folks there. We're the only Black leaders in this space. And the fact that we can sometimes get caught up in KIPP Massachusetts, where there's so many of us, like Farida said, I can look up, side, down, everywhere, and there's Black folks, hello. But then when you step outside of the organization, you see, wow, most people in my role don't look like me. Most people in other organizations making these decisions don't look like me. It is affirming, but it also, that acknowledgement makes you know that, no, I'm supposed to be here. I'm not a quota. I'm not a check mark. I have demonstrated my ability to do this job, and I'm appreciated. And I think that is what is important in celebrating Blackness at KIPP Massachusetts, is that we can combat what we see in like external spaces.
Right. And I think leading back to what you said, Nikki, about this idea, like, we're not doing this for you, the bigger, like, we're not doing this for your acceptance. We're not doing this for your validation. Mm-hmm. We are operating KIPP Massachusetts the way that we are for our students, our families, and our staff. And we invite you to come along that journey if you so choose, and if you know you got to go through the requirements.
Right. And we're going to do a good job of it. Watch. We're going to show you that if you center students' humanity and you educate them toward liberation, you do the same thing for adults. Watch what actually happens. To reject the playbook that the world has tried to give us. That's Black brilliance. Yeah.
Right. So in our final few minutes, and I'd like everyone to share, what are 3 words that you want everyone to walk away from thinking about Black history and leadership at KIPP, Massachusetts? And I'm gonna give us think time, because this is a little bit of a heavy question.
I jump in, or we're still in the thinking phase.
Oh, Sham.
As I look at everyone here, we weren't in these spaces 5 years ago. This wasn't a thing 10 years ago, especially at KIPP MA. And so when I think about Black history and leadership, we are the Black history. And so my 3 words are yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So we were Black history yesterday, we're Black history today, we're going to continue to be Black history tomorrow.
Nice.
Mic drop for those who are not familiar with the nomenclature. I don't know how we're supposed to follow that. That was perfect.
I was about to say it.
I was not trying to go next.
Thought about going last, but I just, I felt inclined to share.
Yeah, that was powerful, Sam. That's powerful. If we're yesterday, today, and tomorrow, my thought was we are it. We are the history. We are the work, and yep, we are it. Not as powerful as Sham's.
I think also not as powerful as Shamika's. My 3 words are celebrate Blackness every day. I think know that your Black neighbors, your Black friends, the Black people that you know, if you are not Black, if you are Black, you are being observed what you do March through January. And Black History Month is beautiful, it is powerful, it is celebratory, and it is so important that we continue to uplift Blackness through our connections, our relationships, our disruption of stereotypes, our continued celebration of Black joy. So yeah, celebrate Blackness every day.
I have 3 words. One is intellectualism, thinking about, this is a school, Black brilliance, Black academia, Black excellence in that lens of intellectualism, individualism, thinking about everyone on the screen is so very different. And we're all Black. And I think that demonstrates how Blackness is not a monolith. And we're all so different, and that's what makes us great. And then joy, Black joy, Black perseverance, Black fun. I'm adding more than 3 words, but it's all about the joy. You know how I am.
We go above and beyond. You're just going above and beyond.
Or we break the rules. Either way.
Stay ready.
What you got, Bryce?
For me, I would say one, it would be for me as a Black leader, I would say curation, being a curator would come to mind. I felt like when I was a teacher, I was an artist and I was trying to create my classroom in a certain way, but I feel like as a leader, I'm moving from an artist to someone whose role it is to curate the museum of the people that I work with and bring out the different gifts and showcase all the different brilliant minds and people that I work with, from everyone from students to families and kids. So curation. Number 2 would have to be just redefining. I think about part of the reason why I'm in this seat, Nikki, was because I was one of those young brothers that you whispered in their ear and said you could be something more than blank, right? I started off as a teaching fellow, right? Like that's what I was hired as. And I think about part of the reason why I've been able to do that is because what it means to be a leader has changed in the time since I was hired at KIPP. What it means to be professional has changed. What it means to be legitimate has changed. And so I think if I've benefited from things being redefined, I must continue to redefine that for others.
Right.
And then lastly, humility. I think like I am constantly learning, right? I had a call with the 8th grade teacher today about something that like I could have done better as a leader, and I'm still getting better at my job. And so humility is something that allows for growth. And I think it allows, like I've said a few times now, like as a leader, when you are able to own your mistakes and shortcomings, you allow teachers to do the same, you allow kids to do the same, and you allow people to just be real and grow. And so I think humility is my last word.
Yeah. I think one that came up for me, Shamika, based on what you said earlier, I think like safety to be myself, ourselves, safety in that like this is a safe place to work, thrive, to like learn, because nobody is excellent at this teaching thing right away or ever, because we're all still growing. And I think a safe place to be our most authentic selves. So yeah. Well, we're amazing. And I have enjoyed chatting with each of you on this here live stream. I'm terrible at closing, so there's that. But I really enjoyed chatting with you all. Enjoy some Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, woo, we got a clean version.
We all paused like,
I know.
Thank you for facilitating.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
thank you everyone for sharing your
Massachusetts,
stories.
Black Brilliant.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you all for joining.
This is the part where Kendrick joins the Zoom, or
Yeah.
Surprise guest, Kendrick Lamar.
Let's go ahead and get Mary and Snoop and
Yeah.
Dre